Today I'm going to teach you about the 5 most common forms of dissociation and what we can do to prevent them from continuing to happen. Now we're going to learn about the following 5 types. Number 1 is dissociative amnesia. Number 2, maladaptive daydreaming. Number 3, depersonalization. Number 4, derealization. And number 5, dissociative identity disorder. If you're watching this video, you likely know what dissociation is. But precisely, it is when we disconnect from reality a bit when our nervous system becomes overwhelmed. First, it's important to know that dissociation is incredibly common, and research shows that half of all adults will experience at least one dissociative episode in their lifetime. It's that common because dissociation is a result of us going into what's called our freeze state. Now, I have an entire video about our stress response, otherwise known as fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and I'll link that in the description. But for the sake of this video, know that we go into freeze when we feel a threat to our emotional or physical safety. And when we feel that threat, we can't fight or run away from it, so we freeze or play dead. It's like our brain pulls the ripcord from reality when we're in freeze state as a way of protecting us from what's actually going on, which causes us to only partially experience the upsetting or harmful event. And because the level of overwhelm or stress can vary from person to person and, of course, situation to situation, the levels of dissociation will vary as well. Before I jump in further, I want to take a minute to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. With BetterHelp, you can access their network of over 20,000 licensed therapists. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, but it's professional therapy done securely online. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. And if you've ever searched for a counselor in your area, you know how long it can take to find someone good, or to even get a call back. With BetterHelp, you can start communicating in as little as 48 hours, and it's available worldwide. Go to betterhelp.com/Kati to sign up and get help now. Okay, let's get back into the 5 forms of dissociation. The first form of dissociation I want to talk about is dissociative amnesia. And I want to talk about it first because it's part of almost all dissociative episodes. And this is when we are unable to remember important information about our life. And it's usually the result of a traumatic or incredibly stressful event. It can be localized, meaning that we can't recall events during a specific period of time, like maybe we don't remember the months surrounding that time when we were abused, which is honestly the most common. But it could also be more general, and we can struggle to remember much of our life's history. And generalized amnesia is incredibly rare, but it can lead to us forgetting about things that happened in the world during that time, or even how to do certain basic tasks, and even who we are. Dissociative amnesia differs from someone having a spotty memory or being forgetful because we're usually unaware, or at least mostly unaware of our memory loss. It's like we never knew it happened, so we don't even know that we don't remember it. Does that make sense? Whereas someone who's forgetful can be frustrated with their inability to remember that person's name, right? It's on the tip of my brain. Ugh. Or, maybe we can't remember the directions to our old home. It can be super frustrating because we know that we used to know it and we're aware of that fact, but just can't quite pull it out of our memory. And it also differs from permanent amnesias due to brain damage or things like that because it always has the potential to be retrieved through talk therapy and other mental health treatments. The next form of dissociation I want to talk about is maladaptive daydreaming. This isn't something that's listed in the DSM, and therefore it's often overlooked. But maladaptive daydreaming is when we spend a lot of our time every day in a daydream. And I don't mean that we're just spacing out or thinking about how being on a beach in Hawaii would be so nice right now. This type of daydreaming is more realistic than that, and it gets in the way of us doing what we need to do each day. We put together another life in these daydreams. We can imagine that we're in our dream home or our dream relationship and piece it together in our mind in extreme detail. We can have entire life storylines going with other people. And if someone in our real life tries to talk to us while we're in that daydream, we can struggle to snap out of it. I have heard from members of our community that because of COVID and working from home, they found themselves staying in these daydreams for days and even weeks on end. And while we're in these daydreams, we can still do simple things in our life, like eating or going to the bathroom, but we aren't really present or able to think clearly. We can stumble when we walk or say something that doesn't make sense in our real life. And when we do come out of it, we may not have any memory of what was going on in our real life during the daydream. Maladaptive daydreaming can be something that we've used when we were younger to help us survive an abusive home or to better deal with bullying. And it worked at the time. But as we get older and move out on our own or are no longer in school, we can struggle to stop. And when we get stressed out or have something scary happen to us, we can quickly return to that daydream where it just feels safer. Also, if we don't know how to soothe ourselves so that we feel safe enough to return to real life, we can find ourselves kind of stuck in a daydream for an extended period of time. And it really impairs our ability to function in our life. The next type of dissociation is depersonalization or derealization disorder. But I'm going to break it into two parts because depersonalization is a bit different from derealization. Depersonalization is when we experience a disconnect from our own thoughts, feelings, sensations, body, or actions. We can feel numb, like we're watching ourselves go through life and not actually experiencing it. It can even feel like we aren't in control of what we say or do. And because of dissociative amnesia, we can struggle to remember the times when we're in this state. Many of you have shared that when you are depersonalized, it can feel like you're a robot, or that you're aware of what's going on, but you don't feel anything in regards to it. It's like we have emotions, we just don't feel them. And this disconnect protects us from feeling those intense emotions that are associated with the situation or even a memory of a bad experience. And even though we are disconnected and kind of spaced out, we're still in touch with reality. We just lose track of time and can feel really emotionally and physically numb. Now, in the DSM, they also mention that people can feel like their head is filled with cotton or that our thoughts may not feel like our own. And obviously, as with any mental illness, everyone's experience is going to be different. So feel free to leave your own in the comments down below. How does it feel for you? Moving on to derealization, this is when we are disconnected from our environment, meaning that we feel detached from the things around us and it can feel like we're in a deep fog or everything around us can feel like it's fake or kind of like we're on the set of a movie. I had a patient once describe it as if he was in a cartoon version of his world and everything he touched felt fake or like it was made out of plastic. And he didn't even recognize anything that was around him. And many of you have shared that this disconnection can make everything kind of look black and white or really blurry. It can also affect our sensitivity to noise, making some things seem louder or more quiet than usual. And just like with depersonalization, this is done to protect us from the perceived threat to our emotional or physical safety. And since we don't feel like we can run away or fight back against the threat, we go into freeze and disconnect to save us from having to be present when the scary or dangerous thing happens. And yes, this can happen as a result of flashbacks or trauma triggers in our environment. It doesn't have to be a real threat. Our nervous system just has to perceive that there's a threat or think that there's something out there that could be threatening. And finally, let's talk about dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. Now, this form of dissociation is characterized by us having two or more distinct personality states. And I'm just going to read you a little bit from the DSM. Because this change in our identity is marked, meaning that there are clear alterations in our affect, our behavior, consciousness, memory, perception, cognition, and overall functioning. These changes can be reported by others in our life or something that we share with our mental health team ourselves. And they call these different personalities alters. Now, when we have DID, we too can struggle with remembering the times when we were in another personality state. because those states are similar to us being disconnected from self, or depersonalization, remember? Many people with DID share how they feel powerless to stop themselves from going into another alter. And once they're in that state, they don't really have control over what they say or do either. Many report that it's uncomfortable to feel like you don't have control over what you say and do. And even worse, because you may not even remember it later on. This can take its toll on our relationships and make it hard for people to know how to communicate with us effectively. And these splits of personality are usually born out of trauma and done as a way to protect us from the pain that we're going through, which is why it's very common for those of us with DID to have an alter that's a protector. This personality can be more assertive or aggressive than we normally could be. And they stand up for us, they argue back, and can even shout or fight at the people who get in our way or seek to harm us. There can also be a childlike version of ourselves that emerges as an alter. And this is the softer, maybe even the version of us that was abused in the past. And just like all mental illnesses, everyone's experience is going to be different. But because more than 70% of those with DID have attempted suicide, it's really important that we get into how we can better manage any form of dissociation that we can struggle with. When it comes to dissociation as a whole, grounding techniques and specific therapeutic practices can be the most effective ways to manage it. And using grounding techniques is going to be your best go-to way to cope. Grounding techniques are things that help bring us back into our bodies and environments. And one grounding technique that I have used with many of my patients is called counting colors. This means we breathe, we take a minute. We look around our space. We count the number of things that are blue, brown, red, and go through as many colors as we can. Focusing on the things around us and trying to decipher their color and keep track of how many there are can help keep us in our bodies and environment when maybe a trauma memory or situation tries to make us dissociate. And this could be done. Another way to ground is to change our body temperature. And this could be done by taking a cold or hot shower, splashing cold water into our face, or even holding onto an ice cube. And if you live somewhere cold, you could step outside for a moment without a jacket on. And one last grounding technique is called the ABCs. And this is where we go through the alphabet and try to come up with things in the room that start with the letter A, then the letter B, and so on. Again, this pulls our focus to where we are and helps keep us connected to our current experience. Along with using grounding techniques, working in therapy to process and work through any trauma or intense upset we have experienced is going to lessen our brain's urge to dissociate. Since it's a protective mechanism, it's only going to pull us out of self or environment if we feel threatened. So if we can process what we are going through, then our hypervigilance will slowly go away and we won't be so reactive to our environment. And finally, if we struggle with DID, it's best to work with a therapist who understands it and specializes in trauma. The goal of DID treatment is to process any past trauma and to get our alters to work together in harmony. This will allow us to live more calmly and minimize any of the painful or undesirable symptoms caused by our alters. And this can also allow us to feel a sense of control over when we switch to another alter. In some cases, people with DID can get their alters to reconnect and kind of fuse back into one personality, but that's not the goal for most people with DID, but it is another possible outcome. As I previously stated, everyone's experience is going to be different, so if you feel that I missed something or didn't offer a coping skill or goal that you think is important, please feel free to leave that in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you next time.
She's on the move.
I'm on the move. I'm going places, Sean.